General Hospital spoilers tease that a silent yet immensely dangerous disaster is beginning to take shape in Port Charles as Professor Dalton's true identity starts to peel away from the respectable academic facade he's worked so hard to maintain. What initially appeared to be minor quirks in the introduction of a new character, from his overt admiration for biologist John Gordon to his unusual fascination with cloning and memory mapping, is now slowly unraveling into a dark and intricately designed conspiracy. While most residents of Port Charles remain preoccupied with their day-to-day struggles, an undercurrent is building beneath the surface, ready to explode. And at the center of it all is Dalton, who is not just anyone, but in fact the secret twin brother of Peter. One of the most dangerous villains ever to wreak havoc on this city. This twist in the storyline is more than just a shocking revelation, it's a foundational shift in everything once believed to be true. The fact that Peter, presumed to be out of the picture after his previous schemes failed, has a twin brother, one who is a well-respected professor in the academic world, signals that the writers are crafting a world far more expansive and dangerous than ever before. Dalton is no random character. He is the result of a chain of events, of misguided scientific experiments, and potentially the final product of a cloning project Peter had secretly pursued before his disappearance. The fact that they are twins adds a complex layer to the narrative and raises a series of urgent questions. Who is the original? Is Dalton the clone? Or was Peter the product of an even larger scheme? These questions are pushing Port Charles into a new realm of chaos, where the line between real humans and their cloned counterparts begins to blur. Dalton, armed with intellect, a calm demeanor, and a pristine appearance, has methodically infiltrated important roles in the community, been invited to teach, gained respect, and, most crucially, aroused no suspicion. But that's what makes him truly terrifying. A man who can sit in a lab, speak to students and colleagues with a gentle smile, while secretly harboring world-shattering secrets, is the kind of enemy no one is ever truly prepared to face. The fact that he is Peter's twin, Peter, who once orchestrated some of the most gruesome psychological tortures and memory manipulations, proves that Dalton is no ordinary educator. He may be the missing link in a covert high-tech crime network, and Peter, even if still in hiding, is clearly pulling the strings from afar. What makes this truth especially catastrophic is its potential for widespread impact. Once Dalton begins deploying false data, using cloning and memory mapping as tools to replicate or swap identities, the entire town could become a massive chessboard where no one knows who is real and who is fake. This doesn't just push Port Charles into a state of chaos, it threatens to dismantle the entire fabric of characters, trust, and relationships that are already fragile. No one can be certain if the person next to them is really themselves anymore. Carly, Anna, Finn, even those presumed dead, if cloning technology is properly harnessed. Any character could return in an old shell but with a new soul, new memories, and entirely different motives. And when life and death are no longer boundaries, power belongs to the one who can control identity. Dalton may not be pulling triggers or making violent declarations, but if he's the one opening the gates to rampant cloning, his guilt surpasses anything a weapon could ever inflict. Each clone created without consent, every memory implanted illegally, every identity swapped for political or vengeful reasons, is an affront to personal freedom, and that's the beginning of the collapse of Port Charles society. While everyone is still caught up in relationships and personal conflicts, Dalton may be quietly rewriting the town's history in a way only Peter would be cruel enough to imagine. If all of this is true, Port Charles isn't just facing a new villain, it's facing an underground empire, where individuals with identical faces and DNA but different hearts are plotting to build a world where reality is distorted, identity is traded like currency, and loyalty is no longer emotional, but programmed. And so, if Dalton truly is Peter's twin, this new madness is the opening shot of an unending nightmare, where science, crime, and humanity crash together in a chaotic dance no one can stop. Dalton is increasingly revealing himself to be a far more dangerous force than anyone ever imagined, not with weapons, not with loud, violent acts, but with his precision in manipulating others' minds. After a long period of hiding behind academic credentials and intellectual charm, He's now beginning to show signs of a true manipulator, someone who doesn't just gather information but can tamper with memories, control behaviors, and reprogram the very will of his targets. And the first victim? None other than Drew, once implanted with false memories, once stripped of his own identity, and now facing a new, merciless nightmare as his mind slowly becomes no longer his own. The fact that Dalton can infiltrate and manipulate Drew's brain marks a terrifying turning point in the storyline. This is no longer a psychological scheme, it is a mental invasion, where the controlled still believe they are in control, while their entire thought process and emotional landscape have been rewritten to serve someone else's agenda. Drew, once the symbol of resilience, has now become a puppet with invisible strings in Dalton's cold and silent hands. Strange behaviors, changes in reactions, and contradictory decisions are all starting to make those around him suspect something is off, but no one has enough proof to expose it. And that's precisely how Dalton operates, quietly, invisibly, but completely. One of the most chilling developments is that Dalton isn't targeting Drew as a one-off experiment, he sees Drew as a prototype for something much larger. If he can control someone like Drew, a former soldier, mentally strong, emotionally scarred, what's stopping him from expanding this to others? What's stopping him from turning Port Charles into a network of seemingly normal people, all embedded with codes, implanted memories, and transformed into tools for a grander mission? Dalton doesn't need threats or grand proclamations. He moves like a calm scientist, but step by step, he's imposing a new kind of spiritual authority over people who still think they're friends. Allies. This is the new terror creeping in, no one knows if they still have control over their own thoughts and actions. And Drew, with his once implanted memories, is the perfect gateway for Dalton to begin his terrifying objective, to erase the line between reality and fabrication, between true humanity and engineered existence. What's even more dangerous is that Dalton remains unsuspected. To the public, he is still educated, polite, trustworthy, always quoting great scientists and presenting moral arguments. But behind that smile lies a system in motion, one where Dalton can and will rewrite memories, control wills, and dismantle the very idea of personal freedom. And once he has Drew, what will stop him from taking the next person? Could Carly be his next target? Or even Sonny, the man who once vowed never to be controlled, could he become another programmed pawn? Port Charles is on the brink of an era where truth is no longer determined by what's seen or heard, but by emotion, instinct, and the strength of each individual's soul. Because once Dalton successfully imposes his influence on enough people, the entire town could transform into a thought-cloned entity, where everyone thinks alike, acts alike, and obeys a single will. His. This marks one of the most explosive shifts in the foundation of the entire story, not a tale of bullets or bodies, but of identity, memory, and the slow erasure of choice by a man dressed in intellect, speaking in academia, but driven by the mind of a scientific tyrant. And if no one stops him in time, Dalton won't just control Drew, he'll control all of Port Charles, from the inside out. A new storyline is gradually erupting around Jocelyn and Emma. As these two young women, once seen as symbols of hope and bravery in Port Charles, now find themselves pulled into a covert war not only against a dangerous figure like Dalton, but also against each other in a relationship that's becoming increasingly tense, riddled with suspicion and conflict. As Dalton begins to show clear signs of mind manipulation and gradually interferes with the consciousness of key characters like Drew, Jocelyn immediately senses that something is wrong. She doesn't wait for an official warning from the WSB, nor does she rely on anyone to lead the way. She begins investigating based on instinct, using her intelligence, sharp awareness, and deep-seated sense of family protection that has been ingrained in her since the early tragedies of her life. To Jocelyn, Dalton isn't just a threat to Drew or a few individuals, he's a mental pathogen, spreading a kind of ideological virus capable of destroying the entire town from within. Yet as Jocelyn quietly digs deeper into Dalton's complex web of deception, Emma steps into the game with a very different goal. She hasn't come to stop him, but to understand. To collect data, analyze, and draw her own conclusions. Emma wants to know whether what Dalton is doing is truly dangerous as others claim, or if it's simply a panicked reaction to a superior mind. She is intrigued by how Dalton thinks, drawn into the layers of logic in his words, and captivated by his ability to penetrate psychological defenses with ease. To Emma, this isn't just a threat, it's a puzzle, a model, an intellectual construct that needs decoding. This difference in approach quickly fractures the once sisterly bond between the two. Jocelyn believes Emma is too rational, too cold, and is risking the entire town just to satisfy her scientific curiosity. In contrast, Emma sees Jocelyn as too emotional, too impulsive, and letting fear drive her actions without understanding the bigger picture. The tension isn't just about differing perspectives, it's about trust. They begin to question each other, avoid each other, and, unconsciously, create the perfect crack for Dalton to exploit. And in that gap, Dalton gains time. While Jocelyn struggles to stop him without tech support or strategic resources. And Emma holds the data but is unwilling to weaponize it, Dalton, like a sophisticated phantom, continues to expand his plan. He seizes every moment of their conflict to widen his reach. Expertly sowing seeds of doubt, spreading perception-distorting signals, causing even those who once trusted each other to question motives and intentions. This is the kind of psychological warfare Dalton excels at. No weapons, no confrontation, just a small breach in trust that multiplies into a system-wide fracture. The conflict between Emma and Jocelyn is no longer personal. It's become part of Dalton's strategy, though neither of them realizes they're being used as pawns. Emma still believes she can stay in control, that Dalton, no matter how brilliant, can still be logically analyzed. Jocelyn, meanwhile, feels that every passing second is a ticking bomb. And if they don't act now, Drew won't be Drew anymore, and Port Charles won't survive as it is. Within this imbalance, Dalton is crafting the perfect gray zone, where no one is certain what's real, what's artificial, what's a genuine memory, and what has been edited. Port Charles teeters on a fragile line between logic and emotion, between understanding and action, between prevention and observation. And if Emma and Jocelyn can't find a way to reconcile, Dalton, with all his calm and precision, won't need to do much at all. Because those trying to stop him will end up clearing the path for him from the inside. And when a manipulator doesn't need to attack, only to watch his prey tear itself apart, that's when he becomes most dangerous. Dalton is now entering the most dangerous phase of the plan he has been quietly constructing for so long. After weeks of hiding behind the mask of an academic professor, the ethical facade is beginning to slip, revealing a dark and twisted mind, not just obsessed with intellectual control but fully willing to weaponize cloning theory and neural manipulation to serve his ambitions. Dalton no longer hides the fact that he's manipulating, rewriting, and invading the minds of the most vulnerable, with Drew as the first victim. Though Drew once seemed to reclaim autonomy after previously having his memories tampered with, he now finds himself once again pulled into a nightmare, this time unable to distinguish between reality and illusion. Dalton isn't just restoring memories, he's modifying behavior, programming reflexes, and most disturbingly, activating latent commands implanted in Drew's brain that no one knows exist. Drew's strange actions, sudden emotional shifts, and irrational impulses are no longer signs of a man struggling with trauma, but symptoms of an alien intelligence operating within him, a mind that is no longer his own. Meanwhile, Sidwell, once considered a weak player in Port Charles's underground power games, is quietly rising and seizing a golden opportunity to re-establish influence. And he's not alone. Dalton's deranged calculations and ruthless actions have made Sidwell realize the potential of an unholy alliance. In a world increasingly distorted by technology, artificial intelligence, and blurred human boundaries, Dalton is the ideal partner to help Sidwell construct a control system from the inside out. In the shadows, a deal has been made, an exchange of knowledge and power, theory and execution. With Dalton managing thought manipulation, Sidwell provides resources, legal shields, and political lubrication to ensure they remain untraceable. But this alliance is more than strategic, it's already bearing real consequences. As Drew begins executing remotely programmed commands, he becomes a new kind of entity, no longer a man, but a weapon in familiar skin. Actions beyond his control, unprovoked rage, cold-blooded decisions, are beginning to shake Port Charles. A first death has occurred. An innocent victim. Not even a target, but someone who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, right after Jason left the room, right as Carly turned her back, and no one knows what really happened. That death is the first alarm bell, but it won't be the last. Dalton continues programming. Each new command is a seed planted in Drew's brain, ready to sprout under the right condition, a voice. A glance, a specific location. Every conversation Drew engages in is now a potential trigger. Those who once loved him are now afraid of him, but no one dares speak out. Because how do you accuse someone who doesn't know what they're doing? How do you restrain someone who's killing with his own hands, yet whose heart has no idea? The surge in fatalities is no longer accidental. It is the direct result of a pre-programmed sequence, where Dalton is the coder, and Drew the execution device. Every victim has symbolic meaning. A judge who once ruled against Sidwell, a doctor who questioned Dalton's research, a former soldier who knew too much. No death is random anymore. Port Charles is facing a crisis of intellect and morality. It's no longer about right or wrong, but real or fake, who is still themselves and who has been reprogrammed. Familiar faces may carry within them a dormant kill command. The hands that once held loved ones may now become weapons at any moment. And Dalton, through it all, smiles calmly like the composed scientist he pretends to be, because he knows, while everyone is busy blaming each other, he's already a chapter ahead. And if no one realizes the truth soon, this wave of deaths is just the beginning. Peter and Victor, two names that once spread chaos, fear, and devastation across Port Charles, are set to return in a shocking and ominous twist, marking the beginning of a new nightmare poised to engulf the entire town. No one could have imagined that these two figures, believed to have been completely erased from the power game, would re-emerge simultaneously, bringing with them darker secrets, more sinister schemes, and twisted new modifications that no one can stop in time. Peter's return alone is enough to send chills down everyone's spine. A manipulative and dangerous criminal. He not only has the skills to deceive and control but also harbors deep personal vendettas tied to the very people he once betrayed. He hasn't come back for redemption, but for revenge. To finish the plans he left unfinished, and more importantly, to prove that everyone was foolish to believe he had truly disappeared. With sharp intelligence, a chameleon-like adaptability, and dangerously unstable psychology, Peter is a mental virus that Port Charles can never fully eliminate. At the same time, Victor, long believed to have perished in Greenland, will also return. And his comeback isn't just the revival of a classic villain, but the resurrection of a symbol of absolute power, limitless cruelty, and totalitarian control. If Peter represents chaos and internal collapse, Victor embodies a shadow regime where every move is calculated, every action part of a vast, incomprehensible structure. When these two forces return, one bringing unpredictable madness, the other terrifying control, the balance of Port Charles will be obliterated. This event doesn't just mark the start of a new storyline, it marks the collapse of everything that was once considered safe. Characters like Anna, Valentine, Carly, Jason, Finn, and Drew will no longer hold the upper hand. They'll be cornered, monitored, cut off from their resources and intel. Long-buried memories, like Jason's grief over losing his brother. The years Drew spent with programmed memories, or the chaotic past between Anna and Peter, will be dragged back to the surface. This isn't just the return of people, it's the resurrection of traumas that were never truly healed. And the most terrifying part? Peter and Victor's return isn't random. They've come back because they know now is the perfect time. Jocelyn and Emma are divided, Jason is reeling from Monica's death and feelings of being replaced by Drew. Dalton is quietly experimenting on the human mind, and Port Charles's underground factions are fractured and vulnerable. This is the moment when every defense is weak. And even the strongest individuals are starting to doubt themselves. Peter may have learned to better mask his intentions. And Victor may already have a new version of the control plan he once pursued with the Cassidines. And if they choose to collaborate, or even just use each other's return as a catalyst to shake the foundations of Port Charles, disaster will be inevitable. Death won't come fast. It will creep in slowly, through suspicion, betrayal, division, and sabotage from within. People you once trusted will start acting strangely. Those long gone will reappear as if they never left. And what you believed was real, identity, memories, emotions, will be distorted beyond recognition. A new nightmare is rising, not through gunfire or bloodshed, but through the fear that nothing is real anymore. Peter and Victor aren't just back for revenge or power. They've returned to rewrite the structure of Port Charles, to turn the town into a place where truth itself has no place. And when the two most dangerous men, who know every secret, every weakness, and every fear, return together, the only thing the people of Port Charles can do is brace for a storm that, this time, no one will survive unscathed.